What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy show with me, your host, Tera Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, as always, August 13th. I'm taking your questions live, and we're going to dive right in because I got to get these kids to bed tonight early. School has started here. I'm in Houston, Texas. We start in August 13th. Today was the first day of school. And my youngest is finally in elementary school. He started kindergarten. Oh my gosh, I was nervous because he's very sensitive. My older one, he's very, very dead set, straight, very strict, very very easy and go with the flow, right? And I was worried that my little one would be very sensitive because we did meet the teacher yesterday, and he said, his new teacher asked him, what are you looking forward to the most? And he said, my old teacher from daycare. And I'm like, oh. But he's a little mumbly, so I don't think she heard it. So they can start a good new relationship, assuming that she didn't hear that he said that. Oh man. So yeah, we're gonna dive right in so that I can get these little children off to bed for an effective school week here, parent life. And this week's topic, it's a good little catch-all right here because I wanted to talk about literally everything. We've got the first week of preseason that started. We've got live drafts going on. Everything is really coming together. More injury reports, more clarity, or maybe not so much clarity from certain people. So we're talking draft strategy, advice, observations, just a little bit of everything today. Got some good mailbag questions in. Thank you to you guys for that. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Start us off with news. The news section might be a little bit longer because we got some good news this week and some interesting news. But we'll start off with the good news. Good news, positive always first here. James Cook. Yay for James Cook. You love to see a running back get paid. Always. I'm always pro running back, get your bag. Because, quarterbacks are out there just making all the vanity numbers. Wide receivers get whatever they want. And the running backs get the short end of the stick here. So $30 million guaranteed for James Cook. Bam, big payday for him. 4-year contract, $48 million total. The $30 million guaranteed. So yay, he's feeling good. Feeling good here. He's been around in terms of ADP around RB 14 or 15 in ADP and also rankings there. I have had him at RB 13 because I was very much so on the side that something's going to work out here. They're going to make it work, and there's not going to be any risk of this lingering into the season. I'm happy that they got it done with a decent amount of time, about a month or so, whatever, before the season starts. So we don't have to worry about that whole, guy contract sitting out of training camp, not doing preseason, comes in cold and pulls a hamstring, right? So he's going to have plenty of time. He's going to get his preseason action. No last minute drama here. So we're feeling super good about that. I did get a question right off the bat in terms of, are we moving him up in rankings? For me, he is staying where he is because, again, I had always been operating as though this was going to work out perfectly. So I've had him at RB 13. That's a nice little spot for him. I might give some strong consideration. This is something I'm going to have to think about, though. No quick reactionary move right here. I might give some strong consideration to moving him up to RB 12 over Kyren Williams. It's not a big difference, 12, 13, whatever. But it is in terms of who you're deciding to pick in that pecking order. A lot of times when I'm doing mock drafts, I love to do mock drafts because it tells me a lot about myself personally and my rankings. If I get there and I'm sitting here and I've got someone at RB 12 and RB 13 and I and staring at it for 60 seconds and I'm like, no, I'm taking RB 13. That means, girl, you might have him ranked a little bit inappropriately there if you're not willing to draft him over the guy behind him. And I think, I'm very solidly 100% that I will not move him up over a guy like Chase Brown. That's not happening there. Brown's receiving upside. I'm, massive true believer there in him. It's just too high. The defense is going to be awful in Cincinnati. Chase Brown is just such a good player to draft at that value. There's no reality in which I'm moving anyone behind him up over Chase Brown. So Kyren is really the cutoff point for where I could shift. And that's just because Things obviously in LA, they're messy with the Matt Stafford injury. He hasn't returned to practice. Sean McVay has been obviously like, hey, not an issue. He'll be ready week 1. Not a major problem. And that's cool. But we do get concerned when we're talking about, and I talked about this last week, so I won't talk exhaustively about it. We do get concerned when we've got a old veteran, around my age, right? This old, an old veteran that is coming into the season injured. You have to pay attention to it, right? He very well could play throughout the season and be perfectly fine, but we do have to kind of like slightly injury hedge right there because of Stafford and also the offensive line injury to Alec Jackson as well. So I could realistically see myself going back and forth there. The only other positive thing for Kyron on that is that if it is Jimmy G at quarterback, even Stetson Bennett, right, at the QB3, he looked good in his preseason game. Shout out to him. But when they do get to that situation, they could just try to aggressively push more volume towards Kyron's way. So just sheer volume might help him balance out the dip and goal line opportunities. That is key. I think I had this, I was going to talk about it later, but I'll just go ahead and dive into it since I'm on the subject. For Kyren Williams and the whole Matt Stafford injury, goal line touches are key for Kyren in an unbelievable way. Because he is a smaller back, you don't traditionally think like you think goal line and Derrick Henry, right? Saquon Barkley, right? But, David Montgomery. But while Kyren is not a massive Derrick Henry, goal line touches are super important to him. He dominated in goal line touches. Crazy. There was a stat that I pulled in terms of, I can't remember. Shoot, I've lost who the running back was, but I can't remember who the running back was I was comparing to Kyren Williams. But Kyren had literally of another RB1, it was HN, Devon HN. Goal line touches had 35. Kyren Williams had, not goal line, sorry, red zone touches inside the 20. HN had 35 touches inside the 20. Kyren Williams had 70 last year. He was incredibly dominant in that area, and his production and value at the goal line and the reliability that they had on him was just so incredible. So it was very valuable to his fantasy value for us. So if those goal line touches start to diminish, we have to start worrying about that because he's a 3-down back. He has receiving upside, but they don't do a super ton amount of that. The goal line touches are very critical for him. But yay for James Cook. That's just, fantastic for him. And we feel good about him. I know some people are concerned about the regression in terms of touchdowns because he led the league last year, tied with Derrick Henry, 16 touchdowns. It was massive. And it was a massive leap from what we had seen from him in prior years. But we do have to remember that they did make a significant adjustment in terms of their offensive structure last season and then towards the back half of the prior season there. So you can't look at it as just like there was just some wild anomaly. They changed the way that they utilized him. There wasn't just an increase in goal line touches as well that caused those touchdowns. There was also a dip in receiving work as well. So they did make clear change in how they were utilizing him in the offense. So I don't expect a massive regression to happen. Natural regression does make sense, but they're not going to pivot away from him suddenly because he was highly successful at the goal line. So that opportunity is still going to be there for him. He can afford to lose a few opportunities at the goal line. And I also think that they might make adjustments just based off what I'm hearing of trying to increase his pass game involvement as well, because that dipped fairly significantly last year. So in terms of touches, and also oddly enough, last year he had less touches than in 2023. So I think there's plenty of room for him to get more volume. And RB 13 is just a very appropriate range for him. Nice borderline RB1. We feel safe and good about him now. Moving on to my next news topic there. I'm going to do shout out to Derek Lincoln saying, hey, in the chat. Next news topic we want to talk about is Brandon Aiyuk. I wanted to talk about this one specifically because one thing that I have noticed is that when a lot of news accounts are pulling, if you're on social media and you're following news accounts, a lot of them are pulling information from what Kyle Shanahan said and saying that the timeline for return for Brandon Aiyuk is week 6. That is not what he said. He did not say that. Let me read you the exact quote from Kyle Shanahan that people are picking from. First of all, Kyle Shanahan was talking about a timeline for return to injury for 3 players that included Brandon Aiyuk. And this is the quote from Kyle Shanahan. I kind of view those guys around the same time, whether it's Mustafa, whether it's Rourke, or whether it's Brandon, he said. I always see them around week 6, which means that it could be week 10. It could be week 5. But that's the area where I start thinking about it, which is a long ways away. I know it's not week 1 or anything like that, so it's something I'm not really thinking about too much. I don't know why week 6 is being pulled, perhaps because that's the first thing he said, but that man did not say the timeline was week 6. He said, I see those guys like around week 6, but honestly, it could be like, I don't know, week 10. That's what the quote was. So when we're looking at Brandon Aiyuk, excuse me, guys, I want to be very careful with the way that he's being approached, because what I'm seeing from people, because the ADP, it's free, right? You know, you don't have to spend a significant draft pick on him. It is moved back appropriately. And so a lot of people are saying, I'll draft him and I will stash him in my IR spot, and then I'll have him for when he returns. I caution you on that. Because I've been through this before too. Often what will happen with that is that it actually goes kind of sideways, and that IR spot that you thought you were going to save him in becomes incredibly important to you. So one way that it could go is that you hold on to Brandon Aiyuk as long as you can, and then you eventually have to draft him because 2 other players go down with an injury, or more than that, you can't afford to keep him. You're moving guys on and off of IR. You've got to make waiver wire adds, bye weeks hit, and it just gets to a point where you can no longer afford to keep him. So you dropped him. That's probably the better case scenario there, because you didn't spend a high draft pick, so you were holding him and you just end up dropping him, and it is what it is. Worst case scenario, though, and this is what often happens, because you drafted Aiyuk, you were very tied to him. The guy that you drafted, you want to hold on to him because at some point it just becomes a sunken cost and you're invested into it. I've been holding on this long, I just don't want to let him go. It's like it happens. I've seen it happen countless times before. And because you're refusing to let go of Brandon Aiyuk, because you've held on this long, and you're sitting there and you're like, I don't want to let him go, because if I let him go and then he comes back, I'm going to feel like a fool. So then you start cutting other people because of their injuries, or because they have bye weeks or something, and you need to make moves, but you don't want to let go of Brandon Aiyuk. And you actually let go of somebody that was a viable fantasy asset that you will truly regret letting go, just to hold on to Brandon Aiyuk for him to come back in the second half of the season and be in some kind of slow ramp up that is unreliable from a fantasy perspective. Unless you are in a deep league. I'm talking about your bench is deep and you can afford to do this because you need to take high upside. So you're in a tournament, right? And you need to take a high upside swing, the bench is deep or something like that. That's fine. But in your regular standard league, it's not going to be worth it 9 times out of 10. It's going to make you do something that you don't want to do. So I caution you on that. More news here. This one is interesting. Greg Roman came out and said that even if Najee Harris isn't back by week 1, there will still be a rotation. To you, Greg, I say define rotation. Define it. Because I feel like that is something that elicits a reaction to, we're like, oh my God, this is going to be a committee. We're moving up Amari Hampton's ADP. We need to pause right here. He's not going to be the lead back. Technically speaking, when we're talking about a rotation, he didn't say what exactly the split would be. It's not as if we were expecting Amari Hampton without Najee Harris would get 100% of snaps. That literally only happens in very special cases. Like Kyren Williams was one of the few people to be able to actually nearly play 100% of snaps. There was it's very rare for someone to consistently be above 90 snaps, because that's just like an aggressive workload, right? we would expect somebody else to be involved. So I agree with Greg. There should be a rotation. Somebody else should be involved. You're not putting 100% of that workload on Omari and Hampton. I would like to see Greg define it. He's not going to define it here, but I caution you to not panic that he said that, because I find it hard to believe that we will see Kamani Vidal or Hassan Haskins out there getting equal splits with Amari and Hampton, who you just spent this massive pick on, and you want to sit there and throw out guys that you did not even play last year. I find that hard to believe, because especially when you go back and you look at the numbers, and I should have had them pulled up because I went back and looked because I was curious. When J.K. Dobbins was the lead back without a healthy name is escaping me right here in my mind. Without a healthy, the second, oh my gosh, why is that escaping me? It was, wow, that's terrible. Why am I escaping? Why is the name of the Baltimore back escaping me? I'm sorry, guys. When J.K. Dobbins was operating as the lead back and was the guy, he was not out there for a significant amount of snaps. He was not overworked, but he was operating as the lead back. So I went and I looked at the amount of usage from Kamani Vidal. It was 6 carries here and there, 5 carries, but nothing significant. So he was involved and on the field, but nothing that was taking away significantly. He wasn't out there getting the goal line touches. He wasn't out there actually being very successful at all. Is a Gus Edwards. Sorry, guys, Gus Edwards. I don't know why his name left me in that moment. But yeah, that was not something that I would consider significant involvement. So Amari and Hampton at 60% of the meaningful snaps, and another running back in or two in there taking some of that little bit of workload off. That's not something to panic over. I still think that Hampton's ADP is appropriate. So don't take that quote from Greg Roman and panic over it. Other news, at this point, everyone has a hamstring injury or some kind of soreness. It is what it is. Unless a player is announced as week to week or with a very specific injury like a high ankle sprain, just kind of relax here for a second. Other than that, guys, I it's funny. I appreciate you all joining in, because I think, I don't know if it's still going on, but I was kept getting all those updates of the new heights, and, they're live with Taylor Swift. And I was like, wait, I'm competing with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce right now. That sucks. Is anyone going to watch? But you guys are here, so I appreciate it. We're going to do some preseason takeaways and then dive into some draft strategies and observations that I am having. After we take a quick little break right here, we will come back and talk about all that wonderful stuff. And we'll be right back in a minute.
If you play in Dynasty, you need Dynasty Deluxe, our premium package for Dynasty Leaguers. We rank over 300 players, updated every week, all year long. And there's a win now mode and a rebuild mode with superflex and tight end premium controls. And a Dynasty League sync, where you can say, sync down all of my sleeper teams, all my FFPC teams, and then you can browse around your leagues for who has needs, and then you can use our trade finder to see what kinds of trades are happening in leagues that are similar to the one I want to do. Then you can analyze trades using our trade analyzer, which balances the lifetime value, which includes picked values out to like 2028. All of that, plus the rookie guide, $25 value, is included. So if you're just in one Dynasty League, Dynasty Deluxe is well worth it. And use your host's promo code, and you can bump up to All In and get $25 off.
All right, we are back. We're going to do some preseason week 1 takeaways. I honestly wanted to make this the entire focus of the show, but for audience purposes for everybody, including those that are listening on the podcast that will likely come out after or might be listening after the week 2 games start, because it's obviously starting tomorrow, and then, wonderfulness throughout the weekend. I would hate to speculate on certain things and then that get debunked immediately. For instance, the Cleveland quarterback room there, and then, Kenny Pickett is traded or Gabriel manages to start this week because Stur is dealing with an oblique injury now. Which is interesting, because I know people have very staunch views about what the Cleveland coaching staff is or isn't doing here. I actually, Shedeur getting the start this week, that would have been cool, but I want to see Dillon Gabriel out there. We have to see him out there. Not because I want him to outshine Shedeur Sanders, because I don't want Cleveland to be able to dance around not putting Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel out there, because the conspiracy theorist in me believes that they were trying very hard not to put especially Kenny Pickett out there, and maybe Dillon Gabriel a little bit as well, because somebody from that quarterback room has to be traded. It ain't Joe Flacco, right? That's who they want to start. It can't be Shedeur, unfortunately, because despite how good that performance was, obviously the whole draft issue and whatnot, there's the likelihood of a team wanting to trade for him if there was really some kind of like anti-Shedeur Sanders thing going on, like slim to none. The only real trade candidate is Kenny Pickett. I don't think that people would give Cleveland what they would be looking for Dillon Gabriel. So really it's Pickett, and I would expect him not to be put out on the field. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I would like to see them out on the field, but particularly I want to see Dillon Gabriel in action, so we get like a nice little actual comparison there to Shedeur Sanders. We want to be able to actually analyze, and we can't do it when the only little nugget that we're getting is what beat reporters are telling us from practice, right? So yes, I wanted more preseason takeaways, but we'll do with what we have here. One thing that I am very confident in saying, Tetairoa McMillan is him. There was that one drop in the end zone. That's whatever. I don't care. When he went up for that contested deep ball, I saw Jesus on that one. His ADP is well worth it. I am making all kinds of content here to promote Tet McMillan, because I feel like at first glance, his ADP, people are feeling a little bit on the ADP where it's just a little bit more aggressive than they would like in theory. And I think that has to do, obviously, with being burned by Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. And I get it. I did not draft, I didn't draft Marvin Harrison Jr. in any of my redraft leagues last year, just because at some point it got, in best ball, I was willing to take that chance, but in redraft, it got a little shaky where you're sitting there staring at it like, this doesn't make a lot of sense there. I do not think that it is the same situation there for Tet McMillan. And my reasoning for that, and I actually have an article that's going to come out, I don't know, maybe like Friday, I believe, that'll do a little comparison there. The situations are very different. When Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, there were red flags, right? One, we overlooked the fact that Trey McBride was legitimately in line to be the first look in that offense. He had the veteran preference, the experience, the connection there. It just made a lot of sense. On top of that, the offensive play calling was questionable. Before, we couldn't really call that one, but in hindsight, what they were doing was a little bit odd there, and the usage of Marvin Harrison Jr. as a whole was odd. On top of that, there was below average pass volume in that offense as well. Those are not problems that exist in Carolina. When you're looking at the target share last year, not a single player had over 100 targets. Not a single player had over 50 receptions. Xavier Legette was actually the target leader. If Adam Thielen had played an entire season, he would have paced to be the target leader, but the reality of an entire season at Adam Thielen's age, that's a little bit difficult to imagine there. Even then, so it would have only been just slightly over 100 targets. There is a clear, massive hole for the wide receiver one in that offense, and it is factually Tet McMillan, Tetairoa McMillan, T-Mac, whatever. I'm trying to be respectful of what his mom said about his name. So McMillan is the guy there. On top of that, offensive play calling, we don't have any question. Dave Canales, what he was able to do in terms of the rehabilitation of Bryce Young last year, fantastic. We've got plenty of examples of what that offense is, the effectiveness of it, the way that he is able to use receivers in that offense. I mean, from that perspective, we have no fear of the offensive scheme and the play calling. Canales is perfectly fine on that end. And then when it comes to pass volume, Carolina was weird, because on the surface, it looks like they should have in theory been run heavy because their pass volume, their pass attempts were below average. Their pass volume was extremely low. But the problem is that they weren't actually run heavy. They were just ineffective as a whole in terms of time of possession and overall efficiency. They ran the 10th fewest plays in the league. They did actually rely on the pass. The volume just wasn't super productive when you look at the season as a whole. Obviously, towards the back half of the season, when Bryce Young started to pull things together, got a lot better. But at the end of the day, this is a team that is going to be pass heavier. And not a negative towards Chuba Hubbard or anything. There will still be plenty of volume from him, but there's still going to be a team that puts the ball in Bryce's hand, and he is going to be the guy that goes out and win it. His first look is going to be Tet. I don't think we need to have any true fear there. So when you're looking at that and you're trying to hedge your bets in terms of draft strategy for these rookie wide receivers, because it can be stressful because we have been burned in the past. McMillan is not a guy that I worry about there. Something that I do worry about though in Jacksonville, that backfield, that I'm worried about. I'm worried that it can be potentially frustrating here. Logically, if you put everything aside, you say, look at that backfield, and you say, in theory, Tank Bigsby should be the breakout player from this backfield. He is the one that is solid and reliable on the ground. He did outperform, for what it's worth. He did outperform Travis Etienne on the ground last year. He was not used as a pass catcher, and I feel like that kind of makes people think that he does not have that capability and that he has stone hands. I think I might have seen that as a comment, like brick for hands. And I'm like, that's not the case there. His name is misleading. Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne are very similar in size. Tank is not actually a massive tank. It's just a name. And he does have a pass catching skill set. He had plenty of receptions in college. It is well within his wheelhouse if they would like to use him that way. And then, of course, Bashal Tootin as well. Again, can be a 3-down back. Obviously, pass catching and speed, explosive plays would definitely be his specialty, which is again why they kind of compared him to the potential of being the Bucky Irving of that offense. But he is young. He is a rookie. He does have the athletic profile, but there are concerns in terms of his fumbling issues and whatnot. Can he step in there and consistently do well in pass protection? Typical rookie things here. So we keep trying to figure out who is going to pull from this backfield. And in week 1, the first series did feature Travis Etienne, which was perplexing to a lot of people, inclusive of myself, because we take value in what we hear from practice reps, right? So, we're getting the beat reporters come out on a daily basis and tell us, hey, first team was XYZ. This player played, this many snaps on first team, this many on third, this many, and so we take value into that. And 9 times out of 10, it makes sense in terms of what the actual pecking order was. So the way that the reports were coming out, it seemed like the majority of those first team snaps were going to Tank Bigsby. And I don't know, maybe they were just trying to see things out and feel things out, but it didn't make a lot of sense that Travis Etienne came out as the lead back. That was peculiar. So I do want to caution people, and it's a little bit of caution, right? Because the highest ADP of any of these guys is Travis Etienne. It's not a massive ADP. You're not drafting him even to be your RB2. It's more of a bench player, running back area there. And then the other guys have much lower ADPs. But technically speaking, this might not end up with a Bucky Irving. Bucky had a lot of massive upside because he bullied Rachaad White out of the way. He was better than Rachaad White. And that made sense, right? The prior season, Rachaad White was ineffective on the ground. But when we were looking at that, it's not as if he was gifted it right away. He had to push to be the lead back with all the upside in that offense. He forced it by being clearly better. There is a reality in which no running back in this offense really forces it to happen. Oh my gosh, I don't know if you hear, there's a massive thunderstorm outside. Hopefully I don't lose power. But there's a reality in which none of these guys actually separate, and they all end up being utilized in this committee with a hot hand approach, perhaps, because that's technically what it kind of started off with Liam Cohen and Bucky Irving and Rashad White last year. Hand situation. So there is a reality in which all of these guys just kind of operate together in a cohesive rotational basis that works for them from a offensive perspective for Jacksonville, but not so much from a fantasy perspective from us. Take that for what it's worth. We need to really pay attention to this one in preseason and continue to see how this plays out, because it could go not even 3 different directions. It could technically go 5 different directions on this one. Such a strange situation. More draft strategy in advice situations here. And let me actually go to the chat here because we've got some comments here. Just want to say hi to Ryder in the chat, very active. We got 2025 waiver wire picks in the chat asking if I can create a calendar of going live so we can attend every show. I can do something like that. I've been thinking about that. I've never found the right tool to figure out how to use it. I use Linktree, but they don't have a calendar, which is super weird, like you would think, but we'll figure something out on that end to figure it out. To draft strategies and whatnot, and ignoring this massive thunderstorm that's going on outside, like right outside that wall right there. Ambiguous injury timelines is the big one, in how we are approaching these ambiguous injury timelines of guys that are week to week status and unclear for week 1, making it kind of difficult to work around their ADPs. Like a Brandon Aiyuk, right? That is one, again, where we aren't getting the clear situation, and his timeline gets very weird in terms of how we approach him, but less clear. Can somebody in the chat let me know if I effectively added myself back into the stream? If you could just let me know. I'm just going to keep talking just in case I did manage to do it. My power went out. I just hooked up my hotspot. We have a generator, so the power immediately came back on, but the internet is going to take like 10 minutes to go back on. So mad about that. I knew that was going to. Okay, thank you, TE. Thank you for telling me that I made it back. The connection might be spotty because, again, it is a hotspot. But hopefully it is good enough for us to kind of wrap this show up. I knew that was going to happen. I should have seen that coming, that I was going to lose power. All right. That means I'm going to have to edit the actual podcast version. Not fun for me. And make it seem like there was nothing catastrophic that happened there. But thank you for sticking around with me. All right. So we were talking about ambiguous ADPs and injury stuff. I did want to mention multiple guys. We'll try to keep this super simple in case power goes out again, so I'm not jerking you guys back and forth there. But Khalil Shakir, another guy with a week-to-week injury there. Obviously, that would affect a guy like Keon Coleman. Later round ADP, so not a massive thing that we have to worry about with that. But when we're talking about another guy with an injury, ankle injury like Tyjae Spears, that one is significant. Tony Pollard's numbers without Tyjae Spears are well deserving of his ADP. Tony Pollard's numbers with Tyjae Spears last year, those were a wee bit of a problem there, that I get concerned about, where I felt uncomfortable with Tony Pollard. I talk about running back tiers a lot, and that's how I'm approaching my draft strategy, which has made me naturally a bit run heavier. So when we're talking about those running back tiers, Tony Pollard falls right outside of that safe zone because of the impact that Tyjae Spears has in terms of taking away that volume, because he needs volume to succeed, particularly in an offense that hopefully maybe should run a little bit better. I'll say a lot better comparatively. I do expect Cam Ward to be significantly better right off the bat than Will Levis. But at the end of the day, the Titans still have things to work out. Even Cam Ward has said that like it's going to be a process here for them. I feel very positively about him, but I still think that goal line opportunities will be a bit scant. And so volume is the key there for success out of the backfield. Tyjae Spears potentially being off track for week 1 now makes Pollard very interesting. I would start Pollard 10 times out of 10 if there was no Tyjae Spears. So paying attention to that one in the timeline is very critical for me. One that is even more critical for me is Isaiah Likely. It's these backup running or backup, not backup. We'll say not even backup. We'll say these 1B guys and a Tyjae Spears and an Isaiah Likely that significantly impact the leader in whatever positional group they are in. Isaiah Likely's injury, making him questionable for week 1. This one is probably the most critical one for me personally, from my point of view, because I'm curious as to how you guys feel about Mark Andrews, because I am starting to realize that I have maybe been a bit more bullish than consensus on Mark Andrews. And there's a valid reason for that, right? And one, Isaiah Likely's timeline being questionable for week 1 plays a major role in it. But 2, the difference between Mark Andrews' performance in the beginning of the season when things were just ugly and disgusting, very, very much so different from the back half of the season where Mark Andrews became literally a touchdown machine. And if Isaiah Likely is not in the picture and they continue to shift back and show this clear preference to Mark Andrews, I do genuinely believe that he moves back up to where he has legitimate overall tight end 1 upside that we are drafting at a significant discount in terms of ADP. In terms of the gap that we're having to pay between those first tier guys, and then also between some of those guys that are sitting at the top of tier 2, like a Sam Laporta or a TJ Hawkinson. When we're looking at the numbers for Mark Andrews last year, obviously the big issue was the massive dip in terms of his targets. He, over the course of the season, averaged 4.1 per game, while Isaiah Likely averaged 3.6. They were literally splitting it right down the middle in terms of the entire share right there. The Ravens offense is still one that operates with, and it's very close there, because Zay Flowers is a wide receiver 1 of that team, but we know factually he does not have that true wide receiver 1 upside. It's an offense that can and would, if they were able to, still operate with the tight end as the first look, and Andrews is literally perfect for that. So when we're looking at him, and if he can get back to being the sole producer in that offense, we would be getting significant discount on Mark Andrews. So this injury to Isaiah Likely is very critical for me, because unlike a situation like a Tony Pollard and a Tyjae Spears, where when Tyjae Spears comes back, I would anticipate they would continue to try and work him back in and alleviate some of that workload from Pollard. On the contrast, though, where we're looking at Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, if Isaiah Likely doesn't start in week 1, and this is Mark Andrews' offense in week 1, and he thrives, right? Let's say he comes out, he's got 10 targets, 8 receptions, a touchdown, over 100 yards. It looks amazing. And he's got like 1, 2, or 3 weeks with that, and the offense is really clicking. Do they really have incentive to say, okay, we got to push Isaiah Likely back in as an equal share here and kind of ruin a good thing that's happening? I think that if Andrews has the chance to continue that progress that he made at the end of last season, that we will just see him be the dominant force between him and Likely. So that one is very critical for me. Joe Mixon is another one that is very interesting, and it's tough to know what to do with it, because in theory, Chubb should be the RB1 if Mixon weren't able to go. We don't have any clear timeline on Mixon. They're saying, oh yeah, he should be ready for week 1. We don't really know. There's a lot of vagueness going on there. On top of that, Nick Chubb has been dealing with an injury. It was in concussion protocol. While he was out, we obviously saw Dameon Pierce getting a lot of first team reps. That was weird. Then we also have Woody Marks that we have a lot of hope for, but unfortunately we did not see a lot of him in the first preseason game. Extremely limited usage there. We saw more Dare Ogunbowale in the game. It's just such a weird situation that we don't know how to approach it. There's a significant discount on Mixon's ADP, but not to the point where I even still feel comfortable drafting him. I would like more clarity so that I could attack someone else in that backfield, but we're not getting a lot of information out of Houston. It's one that I'm trying to avoid as a whole, except for turning around and investing in Woody Marks at the end of drafts, because, again, it's more of a throwaway and upside if it does work out. If it doesn't work out, not a big deal. Chris Godwin, obviously, this one is a big one for me as well in terms of how we're approaching it in terms of strategy for the draft. I've been drafting a lot and beating the drum for Emeka Egbuka because it pretty much seemed like I thought that Chris Godwin was destined for the pup from the beginning. Now that it seems like we're getting fairly close to that and that it's going to happen because we realistically don't have any timeline, they're not giving us one. Emeka's ADP is holding very steady now. I'm surprised that it has not risen up, but I feel like maybe people aren't really counting out Godwin yet. Maybe they're thinking that Godwin's discounted ADP is the real value there. Maybe that's the case. But with Emeka's ADP holding very steady there, basically he's coming in at a very beautiful spot where I feel like strategic-wise, targeting him just makes a lot of sense. He's going in after the wide receivers or the receivers that have high potential, right, as the kind of second look on their team, like a Jordan Addison, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Jacoby Myers, guys that we've seen significant usage before, or we anticipate significant usage this year. And he's going before guys, those are guys he's going after, and then he's going before guys that are in more sketchy situations like Josh Downs and Michael Pittman, Luther Burden, where pecking order or quarterback situation is a little bit short. I'm sorry, guys. Power went out yet again. I'm going to wrap it up because that's the second time that it's gone out. I did work for an electrical manufacturer. I know that if it goes out 3 times, no bueno. So, yeah, even though coming back on and we got a generator, I don't want to keep jerking you guys around with the internet going off and on. And I'm on my hotspot and then lights going off and on, just like, ugh. So I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Maybe I'll try and do like a special second episode or something, or I don't know. We'll figure it out because I had mailbag questions that I wanted to go through. Maybe I'll make a separate special video for mailbag questions. And actually, you know what? That's what I'll do. I think I'll make a separate mailbag question video and post it to my YouTube channel and then get it out there on social media. So I'll do that because I had really good mailbag questions. I'm mad. I had really good questions from mailbag from Jeremy at the Reddit fantasy football handle. Submitted a whole bunch of really fun questions. We had John Chichi on Twitter submitted a question about Daniels, McCaffrey, or Bowers. Casey Coleman, question about Chase Brown. Justin Sonier, question about the Steelers backfield. So these were really good questions, guys. Since I missed it, I'm going to just directly answer you on Twitter, and then I'll make a video as well to kind of make up for this kind of defunct podcast. That sucks. Weather sucks, man. All right. I appreciate you all tuning in. We'll be back next week. I assume the power won't go out again and I will not have a massive thunderstorm. But thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next week. Again, make sure that you're following me on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. And we'll talk again next week for sure, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Again, sorry about the mean weather situation. We'll talk to you again next week. Bye, guys.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.